I'm going to try and tone it down because I don't want it to come off as I'm like some deep conspiracy theorist. The difference in opinion on the Zach Whitecloud hit on Matthew Knies last night, and I'm talking like differing opinions across the board. You had Paul Bissonnette saying it was a clean hit. You had Tim Peel saying it was a clean hit. You had Carlo Koliakovo saying it was a dirty hit. It was like across the board, divided 50-50.
There's no one right answer.
There isn't. And I'm not in agreement that he left his feet. I do think the point was made that he didn't leave his feet. I think the biggest thing for me was the principal point of contact. And
yes,
one of the comments made, and this was made by Paul Bissonnette, was that, where else is the shoulder supposed to go when you're leaving your elbow tucked and hitting the guy right in the chest? And I mean, that's great. That's a great opinion. Absolutely. You're 100% spot on. But what happens when that other player who's taking the hit is leaning forward and their head is the first thing that's hit?
Yeah. That's the main thing. It may not be Whitecloud's intent, but it still hits him regardless.
Yeah, and
last time I checked, the jaw is connected, even though it wasn't like the actual head, the jaw is still connected to your head, your brain, everything.
And the thing I get every old school hockey fan loves these big hits. Yeah. I love these big hits too. The problem is the tone has been set. When you brought in the headshot rules, when you cracked down on the headshots, which, is for player safety, the onus was then taken off the player who is receiving the hit and put on the player who is delivering the hit. And that means that even if that player is slouched down, you cannot make the head the principal point of contact.
Yeah.
By the rules of the league. This is not up for debate. This is by the rules of the league. So to me, I think that's the biggest issue here, is that just a week ago we saw Ryan Reaves, and albeit Ryan Reaves' hit was brutal.
It was terrible. Brutal. Like, it deserved Absolutely. The supplemental punishment.
He deserved the 5 games.
With that.
No,
Yeah.
He deserved the 5 games.
Yeah.
Did it seem a little much? To me, no. I would have. I think I even went as far as saying, I could see getting 3.
It was going to be 3 to 5. I had a feeling it would be that because of his history.
And it is what it is, right? Like, it's 5 games. It is what it is. That was a hit that deserved supplemental discipline. This hit, you can see it slow-mo from the camera right behind the bench. The way that Knies' head jerks back, and fortunately Knies seems to be okay, according to Craig Berube.
Yeah, he is okay, quote unquote.
The way his head jerked back, there's no way that the head was not the principal point of contact.
No.
And like I said, a player skating up ice with the puck is head down, leaning forward. Even if you went and tucked your elbow and you were throwing the hit into the chest, you're hitting the head first because that's the closest thing to you.
Yeah.
It's like crossing the finish line at a race. You're puffing your chest out, but a lot of the time, these guys, they're still running with their heads forward.
They're still trying to get their head over that line first.
There's a reason why there's a saying, you won by a nose.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's just the way your body is made up. I mean, like, all respect to Paul Bissonnette, but your argument about him tucking his elbow is the dumbest thing I've ever heard, because his head was still forward. So what's the principal point of contact? Principal point of contact. The lead point of contact is right here with the shoulder.
Yeah. The other big thing is whether he left his feet or not. And as he goes into the hit, it doesn't look like he left his feet, but then as he makes contact, he does. So I don't know if it's more so like the impact as a result of that. But to me, it's, you hit him in the jaw, which, again, if you're still going in the shoulder and the head comes down, the head is like kind of blocking where the area is of where you intended to hit. But at the same point, it's kind of like, I know there was a bit of a debate as well because Alex Pietrangelo took a hit from Nikita Grabenkin and he was bloody because he went headfirst into the boards. But you slow it down too. You see Pietrangelo kind of turn into that himself. again, I kind of digress, but there are two different situations where it's a borderline hit. It's a tough situation to talk about, but at the same time, I'm going back to the Whitecloud hit on Knies. I don't know if it was bad enough to warrant a suspension, because I don't think anything was bad as the Reaves hit. But my issue I take with this is, he was injured. He left. He went to the quiet room, concussion protocol. As a result of that, he didn't return to the game. To me, if a player is out as a result of a hit like that, it should constitute as a major, because there is a potential serious injury on the line here. And the fact that they called it a major, went back and said, oh, it's only a 2-minute minor, I think that's absolutely disgusting on the league's part, because if you want to take that stuff out, you shouldn't have the ability to go back and demote it and say that it wasn't that serious. Meanwhile, a player is still injured as a result of that hit. That, to me, the fact that you're able to go back, I just don't like it one bit. I think that they really got to set a standard where if you feel like it's a major, call it as a major and don't second guess yourself. I think that second guessing is ruining the league right now, and it's really irated a lot of fans, because you can easily go back and change your opinion on that. Meanwhile, it's still a head hit, even though it didn't officially hit him in the head. It still hit him in that head area. To me, again, the jaw is connected to your head. I mean, it's part of your head. But I just think that if it just doesn't quite make sense to reverse that call based on the severity of what it is. And again, it's nowhere near as the Ryan Reaves hit. I think that the path was kind of the same in terms of both hits, but I think the impact of Reaves was more detrimental, or a serious more outcome that deserved a suspension, possibly more than the Whitecloud on Knies. But it's still he should have been ejected as a result. I don't understand why you can overturn that. And I'm going to come out and say this. I am a huge Zach Whitecloud fan. I love the way that he plays, but I think that was a very serious hit. It was in a vulnerable position, and I didn't think he should have continued on. I mean, I've written pieces how the Maple Leafs should acquire him, because he brings that exact same tough style. I love it, but at the same point, I mean, you can't say that the Ryan Reaves had deserved a suspension, and this didn't at least warrant some type of major as opposed to a minor. That, to me, is just that it just doesn't make that much sense to me.
Can we go back to this idea that we've brought up 1,000 times on this podcast about
1,001 right now?
1,001. This is the 1,001st time, but having a media scrum after with the referees about their decision making, because
I just saw earlier today that George Peros was going to do kind of like a Q&A on Coast to Coast, which I would want to.
He's doing the Q&A.
He's doing the Q&A, but I would still
George Peros. Fuck George Peros.
Totally understand, but at the same time, it's those instances or plays with the refs that we want to see, or like the NHL front office, or like the situation room. We want to see that type of clarity, because we want it here first. Why was this not a major?
Yeah, I just my biggest issue is they're like, if you can go back and change your mind from a 5-minute major, then you should be able to go back and explain yourself as to why you did it.
Exactly.
Regardless, yeah, I think we're giving too much leniency. We're taking the onus off the referees. Mm-hmm. We talked about this a week or 2 weeks ago.
But Gary Bettman seems to think that they're doing a fine job.
Yeah, I agree with you. I wouldn't have suspended Zach Whitecloud. I would have given him a 5-minute major in that instance. You took a player out of the game.
Yeah.
It goes back to this idea of an eye for an eye. If you think the penalty is if you think the play is bad enough to warrant a 5-game suspension, you give him a 5-game suspension. If you think the play was, deservedly took a player out of the game, it should take the other player out of the game. It's this. I'm all for physicality. This is not the NHL of the early 90s. This is not the NHL of the late 80s. This is the NHL of the 2020, where player safety is the biggest concern and the biggest conversation outside of the four walls of league offices. So at what point do you say, you know what, we need to have a little bit more explanation as to why that decision was made? Mm-hmm. This guy's injured. He went to the quiet room. He's now out of the game with what could be a concussion. It was not a hockey play anymore.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate because big hits drove this game.
Mm-hmm.
We all, as kids, we all had those Rock'em Sock'em videos. We all did.
Oh yeah.
Everyone. Like if you were a hockey fan, you had the Rock'em Sock'ems. Or those short clips that came in the Bud Light or the Blues, the Labatt Blue. Regardless, there needs to be consistency and definitivity when it comes to the ultimate goal of what this league wants to do in terms of protecting its players. Last night they did not protect Matthew Knies. Those scrums you talked about, which is great to see John Tavares and Oliver Ekman-Larsson get into it. Those are results of
players taking matters in their own hands because officials are not doing their job.
And we've talked about this. It goes back to players policing themselves. And had Reaves been in that game, Whitecloud would have probably been out of it as well.
He would have had to answer the bell.
Without question.
Yeah. And I think at one point too, Jake McCabe was barking at Whitecloud too. So it wasn't just Simon Benoit jumping in. Or obviously with Reaves out of the lineup, you saw Benoit jump in, you saw McCabe let him know that, hey, we're not going to forget about this kind of thing. And you saw that scrum where the Golden Knights were still trying to amp the intensity. Toronto wasn't backing down. They matched it. And I think one point to you too, when you said that, I think that if it was downgraded to a minor and Matthew Knies is still out or was diagnosed with an injury, I think maybe you could look at maybe one game as a result. But even the minor,
the Leafs came away with on the penalty.
They went on the PK, which doesn't make any sense. I mean, how can you have a hit like that come out on the penalty kill? And I think Berube too was like, "Are you kidding me?" And you can say, I don't want to read lips, but I think there are quite a few, instances right there. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but hey, the refereeing is okay in the NHL. Gary Bettman says it's A-okay.